You click back on there so my clicker will work, please. Just click on the background. Okay. So I'm curious if you can think back to when you first heard about ChatGPT. Where were you? What were you doing? What were you kind of doing in business with websites, that sort of thing? So ChatGPT came out toward the end of November 2022. I first heard about it in January 23. At some point, I got a free account, and then I actually have a record that we got our first paid account in March of 23. We actually all shared an account initially, our team at /creative, and then eventually got our own accounts. Just a few months later, I was actually training other agency owners and their teams how to use AI for marketing. And the reason for that is we had actually experienced unexpected staff departure of our on-staff full-time content creator at the time. And so ChatGPT became our saving grace. And so I had to learn it, had to learn how to use it the right way, not how I had seen other people using it, which was just tell it to write an article on this topic, dump the article out, put that on your website, right? That's not how I wanted to do it. And so I did a lot of experimentation since our content creator was gone, and it really kind of saved mine and Michaela's butts that year in 23 because we were able to use it to ramp up our content production with that unexpected departure. So quick rundown of what we're going to go through today. A lot of you know me already, some of you may not. I'm going to do a quick introduction and kind of my background as it's pertinent to our talk today. We will look at some AI tools and plugins, not just some that are kind of built around AI and then some that are like going to help you with getting more visible in this new world of AI. Then we will talk about online visibility. We'll talk about what's changed over the last few years. I've got an optimization framework I want you to use, especially if this is new to you. And then we'll talk about on-site improvements, beyond your website, kind of off-site improvements. We'll talk about AI and the role of links, both within the results and as part of your optimization. And then there should be plenty of time for Q&A, and then I'll share a few final takeaways as well. So, see, people in the room can't read that. What if they really wanted to read that, Michaela? I'm just kidding. You can leave it like that. So I'm Tim Prevey. I built my first website in 1996. It was on GeoCities. I started my business /creative in 2003. About 5 years later, we were just talking about this beforehand. I think it was about 5 years later I started using WordPress, maybe 6 or 7 years later. But I've definitely been using it for over a decade. We initially just started it as a blogging, because it was initially a blogging platform, right? We started using it as add-on blogs to our website. In fact, I had this really nerdy way I incorporated into Dreamweaver, or incorporated Dreamweaver templates into WordPress sites. I still remember it because I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday morning, but I still remember, Lynn, how I incorporated WordPress and Dreamweaver together. But anyway, so been doing that for years, and we've kind of grown with WordPress. Now we use a page builder, which we won't really get into the details of that. So that kind of predated WordPress blocks for us. So we got on there. I am a big nerd. I won't go too much into the personal stuff, but I am real excited about July 11th. Because that's when the Superman movie's coming out. Although I already bought tickets for July 11th. Lynn, I know this is important to you to know this. Then I also got early tickets for a July 8th showing. So I'm going to see it a couple days early, then again on 11th, and then at least one more time in the theater. I told my wife 5 to 6 times and she said no. So anyway. Yeah, and I love my team at /, especially Michaela, who's here.
Boo, she sucks.
Oh, wow. Didn't think it was going to go that direction. But we do help train clients on AI. We use AI throughout our services and do SEO and a lot of content-based work as well. And you click off of it. Look how it's not breaking.
There you go.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So first I'm going to run through some of the tools and plugins we use that either use AI or help with visibility as far as your website and just your overall online presence go. So Grammarly is a great one. We were using Grammarly before ChatGPT even rolled out. And so Grammarly is a tool, probably a lot of you have used it, but Grammarly is a tool that uses AI to check your grammar. And so we even have a not full-time editor, we have a dedicated editor on staff, and she even uses Grammarly. And so what I like to say is if you're already good at grammar, Grammarly provides a great list of things to double check. And if you're not good at grammar, Grammarly provides a great list of things to change. And so you should treat it as a to-do list if you're not good at grammar and a to-check list if you're actually good at grammar. But that's a huge tool. We use that with all our written content, all our website copy gets run through Grammarly, unless a certain someone forgets and then she gets griped at. Another tool that we're going to talk about using as part of the optimization for AI is, and I always say auto optimize, even though there's only one O in there if you look at it. But this is a WordPress plugin that helps you optimize your page speed by minimizing JavaScript, CSS. There's a lot of settings. You can really fine tune it. It's one of those tools you want to tweak a setting, then open your site in an incognito window and make sure you didn't break everything. But anyway, auto optimize anyway, however you want to pronounce it, that's a great tool for technical SEO. The SEO framework is our go-to general purpose SEO plugin. Some of you may be more familiar with Yoast or all-in-one SEO used to be kind of a close number two. I think the ecosystem of SEO plugins is kind of diversified since then, which is a good thing. The SEO framework is very lightweight, and if you're not an SEO expert, it has a 5-minute setup guide. And I will confirm you can do it. Most people can probably do it in 5 minutes if they're just wanting to get started. So that's a good one from a technical SEO standpoint. And as we will discuss, technical SEO plays a lot into optimizing your site for AI and visibility. Canva is just all about how it looks. There's a bunch of AI functionality in there, but if you're managing a website and you're not using Canva, what are you even doing? I used to use Adobe Fireworks back in the day. Well, in fact, I used it when it was Macromedia Fireworks. But now for any web-based graphic, we almost always use Canva. Of course, we've got ChatGPT, and you'll hear me talking about LLMs a lot. So ChatGPT is our LLM or large language model of choice. But when I say LLM, or even when I talk about ChatGPT, it's kind of interchangeable with other ones. Like Grok is the one from X. You've got Gemini is the one that Google put out, and it's kind of incorporated across the Google Workspace suite of products. But ChatGPT is the one that we use the most internally, and we'll talk about really how it's on both sides of the equation, right? It's on the side of how is this impacting my visibility, but then it's also can be used on the side of how do I take control of this and do what I can for that visibility. We'll talk a little bit about Google Analytics 4. Google Analytics in general just happens to be on version 4. And then Breeze is a caching plugin that we use. It's put out by Cloudways. We happen to use Cloudways for a big chunk of our hosting. I find it very simple to use, but any caching plugin that you like can help your site load faster, which is better, not just for technical SEO, but also for the large language models and AI visibility. Okay, so let's talk about online visibility real quick. So visibility, arguably, was never just about Google. So I have talked for years, gotten on my soapbox about not putting all your eggs in one basket. So don't just rely on SEO, even if that's a huge source of traffic. You should also be getting traffic from social platforms, from directory sites, from email marketing. Should be a mixture of those things so that you're not at high risk. But still, most of our clients historically have gotten most of their traffic from search engines. And so, but really online visibility has always been about more than search engines, right? It's just about being where people can find you and being easy to find online. And so we're kind of removing it, even though some things that were good for SEO are going to be good for that as well. But we're kind of going one step back further and just saying, hey, why do we even care? Why did we care about SEO in the first place? As far as I know, you can't take your ranking and cash that in for cash money, right? And so the whole point was, let's make it as easy as possible for people to find us. And so today we're going to talk about how to optimize for AI for that as well. So what's changed? Literally 3 years ago, we had spent a solid 2 decades plus where, despite everything I just said about not putting all your eggs in one basket, search engines for most people were the primary way that new clients would find you, right? So you go in, you type in either a question or just a few keywords in Google or Bing or some other search engine, and it pulls up sites that have the information you were looking for. Well, even Google has added these AI summaries, right? Certainly that's what you're getting when you do ChatGPT and other large language models. But when you even search on Google now, if you phrase it in terms of a question, it generally will have a Gemini generated AI response at the top that answers your question, that's kind of pulling from multiple sources, the entire internet, just about, and stuff beyond the internet. But if your site or something on your social presence even answers a specific question in a way that AI thinks is the best answer, it will link to your site from there, right? So you can get traffic to your website from AI. And it turns out that what still applies is a lot of the SEO basics, things that we haven't drastically changed how we've done even in the past 10 years. And so we'll dive into what some of those things are here as we go through this. Okay, so if you are super experienced at optimizing your website for SEO and you're just looking for a shift into what's different for LLM optimization, by the way, there are a million different terms, and it seems like the industry is not settled on a standard term. Now, you might hear the word LEO, right? Yes, it does stand for law enforcement officers, but that's not what we're talking about here. So that stands for LLM, or large language model engine optimization, right? You might hear AIEO, which sounds like Old MacDonald had a farm, but that's completely different, right? So there's a million different terms out there, haven't really settled on an industry standard, but all we're talking about is setting up your online presence so it's optimized for AI to pick up the information. Okay. So that said, here's kind of the framework I suggest if this is something new to you, if you're not experienced at optimization, or maybe if you're just looking for how to start getting your feet wet. Maybe you are experienced, but you're trying to get your feet wet, right? First thing is plan on short 1 to 2 hour sprints and finding things, maybe plugins you can install and configure, maybe an audit you can run through, and we'll talk about both of those things here. But plan on things you can do that are early behavior-based wins. So not do I start immediately showing up in AI answers, right? That's not what we're looking for. Not do I automatically start getting ChatGPT traffic. Look for some of these behaviors you can do and accomplish so that you'll start down that path. And then do that consistently over time. So you might even just plan like a 1 to 2 hour sprint each week for a couple of months, and then start going and looking, okay, how is this actually doing on the other end of things? But focus on those behaviors. Remember, tools and AI itself can help you with this. And so that's a lot of what we'll spend today on. But don't just do this in a vacuum, right? Use these tools to assist you. Don't try to figure everything out yourself. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually use AI and drop screen caps in there and have it help guide you through the process. And then stick to the basics. At the beginning, don't try to get too advanced and crazy. In fact, we may talk about some stuff today that I think is basic that you may be like, that sounds pretty advanced. If it's advanced, don't worry about it yet. Just stick to the stuff that seems pretty basic and understandable to you. We're not trying to do a bunch of, we're not on the bleeding edge of this where we're like, what's the latest and greatest thing? Yes, digital marketing has always had a pretty quick turnaround. So in some ways, some of you may think, well, that came out 3 years ago. It's the latest and greatest. No, that's not how online marketing works. So the digital ecosystem, there's stuff that literally, in fact, I got an email from Google about Gemini something this morning. I haven't read it yet, but we're not looking for that bleeding edge stuff. We're looking for, hey, what's been shown already to work? What are some good practices? Okay, so let's start with our on-site improvements, and I like to divide this into two different categories, even though the distinction's a little blurry. But I like to look at the content, number one, so content optimization, and then technical optimization, right? So you can kind of categorize on-site, really SEO, but also optimization for AI into those two categories. And so I'll spend more time on technical just because it's a little more complicated, and then I'll share some best practices for your content as well. So one of the first things you want to do if you haven't done it already is make sure your headings are correct. So the term semantic here is all about making sure your headings are technically set up the right way. So if you don't know what I'm talking about by headings, we're talking about heading levels 1 through 6 on your site. So if you're blogging, one of the things it lets you do is pick your heading. So really, I'm going to give, and this could be like an hour-long talk by itself, potentially, maybe not an hour, but anyway. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. So HTML on the back end, to be nerdy for just a second, like this whole talk isn't nerdy, is H1 through H6. So you have heading levels, you have blocks of paragraphs, you have lists, you have all sorts of other things. But then from an organizational standpoint, you have headings level 1 through 6. And so a lot of people that don't understand what those actually mean will pick the heading levels for their page or their blog based on what they look like rather than is this the correct heading level to choose. And so what you actually want to do is pick the level based on the correctness, which I'm about to explain. And then secondarily, you can look and adjust the appearance, usually manually, while keeping that heading level. I know we use Beaver Builder, it does that. I know the popular page builders do that. I know it takes a little more work in a blog, blog article or in the block builder to do that, but it's certainly doable there as well. I say it takes more work. Lynn, is that even right? You can just go over into the appearance tab, can't you, and can't change that?
It's really easy.
Okay, it's easy.
Yeah.
So it just takes me more work because I'm not used to it. So anyway, all of these let you pick the right heading level and then adjust the appearance afterwards. So you really want to think back to those numbered outlines you might have done in school, right? Where there was one title for the whole thing, and then what was it? You always had to have like at least 3 subpoints or something like that. I go back to that. It's not that literal. But as a rule of thumb, you only want one H1 per page. Now, Google has said we don't care if there's more than one H1, but typically, again, I'm going to not tell you about the exceptions. I'm going to tell you about the rules of thumb to kind of simplify this. You want one H1 heading level per page, and that's typically the name of the page and or the name of the article that page is. And so that helps Google know, this is the main theme of this page. That helps AI, large language models know this is the main theme of this page. And then each heading within that page, each kind of block of content will be in an H2. Right? So like when you're using the block editor in WordPress, it defaults when you switch to heading, it defaults to H2. And that's because typically that's your next organizational level. Then any subpoints within that, you want to be H3. Now, my rule of thumb is to have at least 2 H2s per article, right? Otherwise, you're not organizing sections. It's just the rest of the whole article is under that section, right? So you should have at least H2s. And when you do subheadings, you should have at least H2, H3s per under each H2. Now, there are also H4s, 5s, and 6s. But again, as a rule of thumb, you're overcomplicating things too much if you're getting that granular with your heading levels. Typically, you'll be using something more like ordered list or unordered list. So numbered lists are called ordered lists and unordered lists are bulleted lists, right? So I'm using the HTML terms a little bit. I apologize for that. But anyway, typically at that point, you'll use those. So you want one H1, at least 2 H2s, and then the subsections broken down into H3. And so you really want that to be organized logically into sections. Now, the good news is you can just copy all your stuff and dump it into ChatGPT and have it help you do that. And so just tell it, here's my content. I want better organization so that I can provide correct semantic headlines and it will know, or headings rather, and it will know what you're talking about. Speed and structure. So that's a lot of what I was talking about with the Breeze caching plugin, with the auto optimize or whatever it's called, auto optimize. It just sounds weird to say it that way. making sure your site loads quickly. You can also use third-party tools to actually check this because sometimes it's just your internet that's causing it to load slowly, right? So use tools like Google Site Speed will help you check. The old GT Metrics tool will help you check. And what those will do is it'll actually give you a list of things to change on your site, and it does actually give WordPress specific suggestions. And you may get into that and it may be a little overwhelming, it may be beyond your technical ability, but just look through the list and see what in there you actually can do and make those changes. Also, don't upload images straight from your phone. Resize images before you upload them to your blog or your website to make them a lot smaller. Lynn, how big do you make photos nowadays?
It depends. A lot of them I'm just kind of redoing, and so
Yep.
some will be 500 by 600 pixels, but when I get the photo of, the staff member,
Yep.
it's like 3 megs.
Yeah.
So I use Swoosh.
Okay,
on
Swoosh.
that,
Yep.
and I use that, but I also have used, if it's not quite right, I'll just use the WordPress tools when
Okay.
I upload it.
Yep.
And do something.
And or Smush, I think Smush is another one, or Smush it. So we've typically done that in before we upload to WordPress, but I know a lot of people optimize it within WordPress using a plugin. Our rule of thumb for years, although maybe getting time to change this, has been a max of 1200 pixel bounding box. So either 1200 max of 1200 pixels. Wait, was that wide if it's landscape or
It's
high
wide.
if it's yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then just insert it at the right size, right? So if it's going to take up half the page, you want to make sure it's not necessarily a full 1200 pixels wide. Although, like I say, again, you can get super complicated with stuff like this and look at Retina display and how's this going to look on Macs and all sorts of stuff. But the rule of thumb is just don't upload huge images, right? Downsize them to keep it loading faster.
Now, if you upload and use a plugin
Yep.
to reduce the size, that image is gonna stay on your hosting unless you get rid of it.
Yes, if you're using, yeah, that's a good point. If you're using your plugin, it's still gonna help with this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's taking up more space on your hosting than it has to. Yeah, absolutely. Because how WordPress works is it'll save that original uploaded version, but then display the smaller version as well. So that's definitely something to be aware of. There's also some behind the scenes code. Well, there's a lot of everything's behind the scenes code, right? But there's some behind the scenes code known as schemas. And so Q&A is probably the most common place I see where it could be improved greatly by adding some schema functionality on the back end. There are schema plugins like FAQ. I can't see it because it's behind the box. Anyway, the reason this one was not in our list earlier is because I've never used it. And so this is one of the areas that I know there's opportunity we have to improve some of our client side is making sure schema is set up. But I do believe that the SEO framework, if you have the paid version, they have an add-on for schema as well. But I believe this one that I mentioned on here is actually free. Then, of course, at the very end of this slide, I allude to some of the content. In general, your content should answer questions people are actually asking, right? That's how you get it to show up in AI. That's how you get it to show up in search engines. Your number one source, ideally, should be real interactions with people, with your ideal customers, clients, website visitors. What questions did they actually ask that you heard, right? Those should be your first pass at questions that get answered by your content. But not everybody asks a question when they have it. And so the other thing is looking at Google suggestions, right? So when you search something related to your field or related to the page or the blog topic, write the content to people first, but then go and double check and say, what changes do I need to make to answer these questions? Now you can't do it the flip way, right? Especially if you're blogging, you can say, what questions related to WordPress and web design are people asking? You can start entering some words and then look at Google suggestions. You can follow all sorts of rabbit trails. But anyway, answer questions that people are actually asking, which again, there's a whole book about this. They Ask You Answer that kind of talks about this strategy, but it's also just been a good strategy for SEO for years and years and years. And answer the question. So Google has said for years that length doesn't matter. It's just how well do you answer the question. Now, functionally, we found people if it's too short, they're not answering the question well, right? And so just make sure you're answering whatever question it is, and then your answer should be as long as it needs to be. And so that's been effective so far in AI, just like it is in SEO. And again, you can use ChatGPT because it's looking at the internet, what people are actually doing. So you could say, I'm setting up, let's say you're a plumber. I don't know anything about plumbing, so this may sound dumb real fast, but let's say you're a plumber and you're like, hey, I don't know what people ask. They just come call me out when something's broken. And so you can say, ask ChatGPT, hey, if someone's not quite ready to call a plumber yet, but wants to try something themselves first, and then it goes poorly, so they call a plumber, what are some questions they might enter into Google? Right? And then ChatGPT will spit out some answers, and then take those into Google, because ChatGPT's info is always a little out of date. Take that into Google and put that in and see what suggestions Google gives you based on that. You can also have AI, you can copy your HTML, or it's less reliable, but you can give ChatGPT a URL to a page on your site and say, hey, look at this and give me 5, 10, 20 suggestions on improvements I could make from a technical SEO standpoint or from a content SEO standpoint. And then go through that list, and the things that you feel comfortable changing or doing yourself or that make sense for your business, go ahead and change. We found that's a lot better, asking for a specific number than just say, hey, tell me anything I can improve on this page, right? Asking for a specific list, because then it's kind of forced to give you that number of things, and you can go through and pick and choose what makes sense for you. And if you go through and you're like, I don't understand any of these things, you say, well, here's all the plugins I have installed on my WordPress site. Adjust these suggestions based on that list and the capabilities. And it can give you that, and it can even walk you through how to make the changes in the plugin. Now, again, it's not always up to date. And so in that case, you might get to a certain step and say, I don't see that setting it's talking about on here. Screenshot the page, dump it into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm stuck here. Here's what I see. And it can kind of guide you through. It takes some back and forth a lot of times, right? Especially if it's a plugin that's updated fairly often, but it can help guide you through it. Okay, so things not on your website. So Google has said for years that it doesn't really look at social signals, right? It doesn't look at likes, it doesn't look at comments, it doesn't look at shares, that sort of thing. However, if you search for a company's name on Google, almost without exception, you're going to see their website and their social presence as well. And so just because it doesn't help your website's actual ranking that much, doesn't mean it doesn't make it easier for people to find you. And that's all we're talking about here, is making it easier for people and AI to find you. So as it turns out, having a robust, healthy social presence helps make it easier for AI to find you. And you really ideally want to structure your presence there, not dissimilar to all the suggestions I just made from a content standpoint on your website, right? So you want to answer questions people are asking, but also they'll have things like author bios or your pages, kind of leaderships at your company maybe, or your specific presence on those sites. And so have something for both your organization and you personally, and then be consistent about how all that's written. In the world of local SEO, we've talked about consistency for years, helping with as far as being consistent with the NAP, or name, address, and phone number. So how is your company's name on all these map websites? How is the address? How is the phone number? We found it to be similar, even broader with AI, right? So if you're consistent in your online presence, it's more likely to include you. It sees that as reliable and trustworthy. And then social is not the only place. Being interviewed by podcasts, having articles about you, being on some of those directory sites, all of that helps give you a more robust online presence. And I say be findable everywhere. Let me temper that with just a small caveat. Be findable everywhere you can be active, right? Now, a lot of directory listings, it doesn't matter that much if you're active, but you do want to update your photos and that sort of thing. You might use a tool. We use an agency tool called Bright Local, but there are a lot of tools you can use to manage your directory listings on multiple sites. But don't get on a new social site and then just never post. That's not going to help you. Most of the popular social sites, you can pre-schedule posting using third-party tools, some of them directly on the sites. So feel free to do that. You don't have to being active doesn't mean you have to be checking in on comments necessarily every day or even posting every day. For example, I look at threads manually about once a month. But if a notification comes up, I look at it sooner and I still post there regularly, both personal and for our business. So the caveat is be findable everywhere as long as you can maintain kind of a healthy presence on the platforms. Okay, AI and links. And so I'm talking about two things here. I'm talking about links, both in the traditional SEO sense and links that are included in the AI results. So number one, links do still matter. Now, caveat on this part, we have a lot of clients that have gotten great SEO results over the years and don't worry about internal linking as a SEO strategy and don't worry about external link building as an SEO strategy. But maybe you have had different results. Maybe you're using those as strategies. However you're using it, keep using it for AI, right? Internal links ideally should be helping people also that are visiting your website. So if you're doing them, they should be structured that way. And then external links should be helping bring in a new audience where it makes sense. And so if that's already part of your strategy, keep it the part of your strategy. It matters just as much as it always has. But when an AI gives an answer, it does not always include a link. That doesn't mean it doesn't mention you. That doesn't mean it doesn't use your answer. And in fact, theory, this is not really, well, a lot of this, well, this is a theory at this point, and I would say I don't have concrete proof for this, but there is some, what is it called? Not situational. There's some evidence that this could be true. Circumstantial evidence, thank you. There's some circumstantial evidence that this might be true. That the more often AI starts citing you where you seem like the right answer to certain questions, the more your reputation builds up with that particular large language model, and the more likely it is to end up linking to you. So huge caveat there that that's very circumstantial evidence that that's the case, that's actually the case right now. But regardless, just make all of your content easily scannable by people, easy for people to link to, and link to other things as people would like, and you will be AI friendly as well. Okay, man, that was fast. Well, I say that was fast. I don't know. It seemed fast to me, but I was giving you. Michaela's going to come up and take a look at chat and make sure any of you that have any questions, that I hear those questions. There is no such thing as a dumb question. This is all relatively new. The internet's been around since Al Gore invented it in the 70s. But AI is all of, like I say, just right at, or just not even 3 years old. In terms of the kind of the current iteration of AI. So any questions you have, I'm happy to answer if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, I can look it up later for you. Just contact me through email and I'm happy to answer those questions as well. But what questions, do we have any questions in the chat, Michaela?
We do not, but Megan says she would not survive without Grammarly.
Agreed, Megan.
That's funny, Megan. I would not be employed without Max.
That's true. I use it as a list of things to check, and Michaela uses it as a list of things to change. So, yes, Lynn.
You mentioned directory sites.
Yes.
About, I don't know, 10 or so years ago, I built a site for my eye doctor. And he wanted me to register him at a bunch of these directory sites, and I did it all manually.
Ooh, that sounds painful.
I did,
Yep.
I don't remember how many, which ones, but how do you do this? Did you say you do this?
Yeah, so we use a tool called Bright Local. It's intended for agencies, and what it does is you pay a monthly subscription, and then you can also buy credits And so each time you do kind of a directory thing, you get so many credits. And we don't even use the full functionality of it. We use the tools that make sense for the services we provide. But it will let you submit to a bunch of directories, and it actually will give you ranking. I think it does high, medium, low, maybe. But it gives you a bunch of basically, here's all the options they'll submit to, and here's the how important it thinks each of those directories is on high, medium, low. And then it also kind of tags them if they're like, hey, this one will require a little manual work, but we'll send you an email when it's ready for that manual work. And so yeah, so we use those, and it kind of does both. Now it incorporates into Google Business Profile as well, but we do Google Business Profile manually. So in our mind, that's the one that we should really have fine-tuned control over and direct control over with our clients. And then all the rest, we just make sure all that info is consistent, getting pushed out. And then it does stuff like it'll make a temporary email address on the ones that require email verification, and then it'll say, hey, here's the thing. We submitted it to these that require manual. Here's your login for this temporary email address to go in there and approve stuff. But then there are others, that will actually call the business. And so we'll have to tell clients and warn them, hey, we're doing a round of this for you. You might be getting some calls from different directories that you've never heard of. Just tell them, don't give them any credit card info, but tell them, verify any of the information they asked you. So.
Do you think it's valuable? I mean, when people do searches.
Yep.
I don't see directory information come up.
No, the biggest thing, well, it does. There are a lot of industries where directories will list in the top 5 pretty consistently, even above local options for what you're looking for. But even if that's not the case, Google looks at that as verification that your information in Google Business Profile is accurate, which is why we've talked for years about NAP, keeping the name, address, and phone number exactly consistent across all those platforms, because then Google views that as you being a reputable business, and it can help your Google Maps ranking, or what is it they call it, the 3-pack, the map pack, or whatever. The ones that show up on the more general results helps you rank there.
Yeah.
I didn't hear much about how you prompt AI, and that's what helps me really understand it. Can you talk through some of that?
I can. That's why, because this talk is more about the visibility and things to do so when other people prompt AI. But yeah. So first off, one of the things that we saw early on, that when we had that staffing turnover, we were like, well, we can't do it like this. Everybody's doing it wrong. Was that people were just saying things like, give me 5 article ideas for SEO. And then they would take one of those and say, great, give me a 1,000-word article on this topic. That is not the way to do it. You want much more interaction. So let's say I started like that. Let's say I said, what I would do actually first would say, here's all the services we provide around SEO. Here's what our ideal client looks like. Given all that information, give me 5 topic ideas, or 10 or 20 topic ideas for SEO. And then if I don't like any of the first round, I'll ask it for more, right? But then I'll pick a topic idea and I'll say, great, let's take this topic, and I want you to ask me 20 questions, one at a time, with the answer to each informing the next question, but not derailing us. And I'll answer those questions around the topic of this article. And then it kind of walks you through one at a time and does a bunch of questions. And then at the end, it always tries to spit out the article. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. Give me 5 different options for a 5-point outline for this article, given everything you know now. And then I'll walk it through literally one section at a time. You may have also noticed, if you just tell it, give me a 1,000-word article, it's not going to give you a 1,000-word article. It's most likely going to be like 600 words or something way off. And so if you walk through one smaller section at a time and break it down into sections, it's a lot easier to fine tune it into being how long you actually want it to be. So those are some tips if you're using it for content. Now, if you're, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but if you're, for example, doing a site audit or a page audit on how can I improve my website, start at your homepage, right? If you don't know where to start at your homepage, or go to Google Analytics and say, what are my top 5 pages, and do it on each of those pages. What are my top 5 traffic pages over the last 6 months or a year or something like that? And then say again, so dump it all in. I would do the HTML code, although if you're talking about a blog, you can dump just the content in potentially. But I would dump the HTML code in and tell it, hey, I'm on WordPress, but give me a list. And you might even tell it the plugins you're using at the beginning. Here are the plugins I'm using, but give me a list of 10 ways I could optimize this page for both SEO and AI. And then you go through the 10 and just do the ones that you're comfortable doing in some of those sprints that we talked about.
Are there any case studies out of working here, like locally, maybe in Oklahoma, that you like, oh, this would work out well if we just correct their visibility?
That is a great question, and I know we've got some people online from Oklahoma and some elsewhere. The great news is that we tend to be a little behind the curve in Oklahoma in terms of adoption. And so we actually have kind of an unfair advantages in that we can watch what people on either coast are doing and be kind of ahead of the curve here locally for that. So now that said, I haven't heard of any case studies where it just kind of revolutionized the results they were getting. We have seen traffic increase from ChatGPT when we look in Google Analytics from some of this. And we have heard of isolated incidents of people saying, yes, I actually got this piece of business from ChatGPT, but that's when they were asking. And a lot of our clients don't ask where their business comes from, for better or worse. But we can look at that at least milestone of, are we seeing a month over month increase in their ChatGPT traffic? Now, I will say what we are not seeing at this point is we're seeing a decrease somewhat. Again, we're lucky that we're insulated, so it's not happening as quickly here as it is elsewhere in the country. We are seeing a gradual decline in the traffic from like Google, and we are not seeing a corresponding increase in the traffic from ChatGPT. So the ones that were heavily relying on Google are definitely seeing a decline overall in traffic. And so again, in my mind, this is even if we in Oklahoma are seeing that decline slower, getting ahead of the curve on some of this AI optimization, which again, it's not drastically different strategies from SEO, from good SEO basics in the past, but getting ahead of this and keeping an eye on it early on, I think is super useful.
And a little bit more about Q&A and schema.
Yeah.
Any cases in that film? So I was just curious.
No, like I said, we're really not even, that's one of those things where the impact, I would say never really reached Oklahoma as far as small businesses go. And so meaning it was never really a leg up for anyone here locally. But like I say, I'm looking at us adding it through the add-on from SEO framework, because we finally we used that plugin for years without getting the paid version and found tons of value on it. And then they offered some deal in December, and I was like, well, they've made me tons of money. I should definitely pay for this plugin. Right. And so I paid for it, and then I was like, oh, there's some cool add-ons in here. For us, it's kind of fringe cases that a lot of the add-ons. But the schema stuff is something we're looking at toying with second half of this year. Again, all this stuff. AI seems to be moving a lot faster than SEO. We used to talk with organic SEO for local businesses here about not counting on any results till you're 6 months in. This is a long-term game. AI is faster. I will give it that. So you can see so far we've seen changes faster. So I would say potentially you can expect some impact faster, but some impact is far less still than SEO at this point. So, but yeah, so I'm looking to play with schema and see what.
I think our friend Megan might still be on. There might be some other franchise folks in. So what advice would you give to somebody who has some of that technical stuff managed for them, but could have more control over their local stuff?
Yeah, focus on the content. You for sure. I know that we've got multiple franchises we work in, and to varying degrees, they all have some control over their content. And so content and third-party links, third-party sites or something. So get interviewed by podcasts and talk about stuff people are asking about. And AI can pick a lot of that up as well.
We didn't have any questions here in chat, looks like.
Okay.
So anybody get those in? I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to fill those up.
Go ahead and change to the next slide. I'm gonna share, if people have any final questions, happy to answer them, but I'm also the one that shares the logistics at the end. So, our next session will be July 30th. For you guys here in Oklahoma, happy to have you here at the Sandler Building again. But if you're not in Oklahoma, we will have the online option. Do we know the topic or speaker for next month yet?
I can go find out.
Okay.
I think it's,
So some takeaways here. I'm gonna move the chat because I don't remember all the takeaways. Because I already knew them. That's why I'm giving you time, right? Oh yeah, start small. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, just start with one plugin and configure it. If you don't have an SEO plugin on your website, you might consider the AI the SEO framework, and that'll give you some AI gains as well. But maybe if you don't have control of the back end of your website for some reason, you can start with content, do a content audit, and just copy your homepage in or copy a blog in and ask it to give you 5, 10, 20 suggestions to make it more visible to AI. Use tools and plugins. Our WordPress has a great ecosystem of plugins. Make sure it's a reputable one, which you can ask ChatGPT if it's reputable or not, right? You can ask ChatGPT for plugin suggestions. But use plugins and then use tools like ChatGPT, like Grammarly, all those others that we mentioned to help be more visible, more reputable to AI. Fix your HTML structure. Again, I know we may have some on the call that don't control that. But in terms of WordPress itself generates solid HTML. It's all about how you use it. It does matter what plugins and themes you pick because they have their own HTML that they generate. And so again, just make sure it's reputable and you can ask ChatGPT about it as well. But go through and do an audit of your popular pages and just make sure those headings and which I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but the HTML looks good and this content is structured well. We actually have a client right now that we're moving off of HubSpot site builder onto WordPress. Found a plugin to migrate the blogs, which mostly did it right. But it turned out over the years, I still need to talk to her about this. She had not been using any headings. She was just using bolded text and didn't understand that actually made a big difference. So make sure your HTML structure is correct and then actually go through and logically structure it well as well, which is kind of our 5th point on there. Go beyond just your website, establish some presences on social, on directory listings. Again, just pick one thing, start with one thing. And then be everywhere that you can maintain the presence, right? That wouldn't all fit on the one bullet, but be a lot of places and make it easier to find. I don't think we have any final questions.
no, but I can hype up our speaker for next month. So
Excellent.
next month, I'm actually super excited about our speaker. It will be Crystal Oaks from Oaks Creative House. She will be talking about website photography. I don't know if you know this, but photographers are massive nerds. And just because you're an excellent photographer doesn't mean they understand your brand, doesn't mean they understand your voice, doesn't understand how to connect with people through the internet. So if you want to see how to do that, even something as simple as how to dress for your website photo shoot, all the way up to how to change poses for social media, she will be sharing on that. Most of the photography you saw on our stuff today was done by Crystal. She's incredible and very smart. So I'd love to see you here again if you have questions about making your website visually attractive through photography.
That's it. Thanks, guys. See you next month.
Oh, that was just for me, not for you.